All right, we will get started. Brad's here, we can start.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All members are present.
Every single one.
Minutes of March 3rd. Did everybody get those minutes? Are there any questions? Or actually, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstention. Do we have the minutes from 17?
No, just those.
So we'll table the minutes from 17.
Yeah, please.
All right. So tonight we will have emergency management, the Marine Patrol, and the WPCA here to discuss their budget. And we'll start with emergency management. The floor is yours.
Well, I didn't ask to come here. I spent 2 hours and 20 minutes here last time. I thought we were going to have to deploy our COTS and MREs at the last Board of Finance meeting. So tonight is emergency management. As we discussed briefly last time, emergency management is actually a function of the chief executive officer for the town, so obviously our first selectman. So I'm privileged and honored to serve as the emergency management director. But really, unlike my position as police chief, I have zero latitude in that position unless I'm authorized to do work on behalf of the first selectman. So states of emergencies are all declared by the first selectman. All the assets don't get moved or pre-positioned without the authority of the first selectman or the board of selectmen in some cases. So I can talk about our operating budget. But just keep in mind, like the police budget or like the Marine budget we're going to talk about, or any other department that's here tonight, all these budgets have passed through the Board of Selectmen. So it's technically the Board of Selectmen's budget at this point. So I'm here, and I hate to throw Carl under the bus, but he is certainly here.
You know what? That's not under the bus.
Okay.
It's a good budget.
Yeah.
It's 1.8. So.
Is there anything in the operating budget you'd like to highlight? Anything that you want us to especially be made aware of?
The only thing I think that's very important to highlight is, this is the only time I'll use percentages, John. We have a 0% change. So we,
Excellent. That's what I like to hear.
we have asked for no additional monies to be able to perform the same emergency management functions that we performed in past years, with the exception of, not in our operating budget yet, the ability to store the supplies that we feel are necessary to have on hand to support public safety's efforts in the event of an emergency, obviously to serve the public. So,
And with regard to that, in the capital outlay fund on page 11 of the budget, now I want to make sure we're all looking at, there's a line item that says rent for police station. It's been that way for 5 years since the police station needed rent. Obviously, that's not what it is next year. So, in the interest of being clear, that probably should have been changed to emergency management storage and not rent for police station. We're not renting a police station next year. So, but that line item slipped through, and that's what it is. So, I just want to make that clear.
and I do appreciate 4 Board of Finance members have actually come to look at the emergency supplies that we're talking about. So I appreciate that, John, Barry, Dave, and Brad. I appreciate you guys being able to take the time, and obviously that invitation is open to anybody else who wants to come and take a look at the town's emergency management supplies.
Does anyone have any questions for Chief Spiro, the Emergency Management Director, or Carl?
Well, I would just like to say that the $30,000 for the storage at this time is not something that I would put my yes vote to.
It was a bit of a placeholder.
It's a bit of a placeholder for
Yeah.
how long?
No, I mean, it was a placeholder for this year. I was just estimating what a rental might be for storage, that's it.
Well, the last number you gave was 25,000, I believe. right?
Yes.
For 1 year,
Yeah,
for approximately 5,450 feet at 550 square foot.
I forget how much storage it was.
But in any case, my recommendation would be, I would put the $30,000 worth of product that we have in the police station for approximately a year, and try and find alternatives for the chief for his emergency management. When we're talking about $30,000, it doesn't really make any sense to me to spend $25,000 to store $30,000. I know we have the command center to think about, and I think we should find space for the combination of the command center and the $30,000 of product.
Remember, that number was $50,000 to $60,000 of product, not $30,000.
Oh, I misheard you
Yeah,
there.
so 30,000 was the
I
rent in year 2. So if you don't mind, we can rewind the clock a little bit, and Carl can back me up on this. How this rent property came to bear is a gentleman who owns the building walked in unannounced to see the first selectman.
Truly walked in, came in and said, I have a building, you interested in buying a building on Custom Drive? I said, no, I'm not. And he said, here it is, yeah, you know, and I said, well, you know, it's possible we may have a storage need for items. And that's really it. That was how the conversation started. I mentioned it to the chief 2 months later, not even when he first walked in. That was in January. So, Tom Johnson out of Old Mine. That's how it happened.
So we got together, Carl gave me kind of some parameters on what he'd like to see in a lease agreement. The gentleman negotiated back and forth with his attorney, he drafted up a lease. He's willing to do $50,000 worth of renovation inside his building. Some of the conditions that Carl wanted was no more than $30,000 a year, so we got 25 for the first year, because I always like to beat the number that he gives me. So 25 for the first year, 30,000 for every year after that, with the renovations included. A tax abatement, which was worth about $4,000 or $5,000, but same deal that we struck with our current landlords for the temporary police station. A non-appropriation clause language, so if something wasn't appropriated in a budget, we're out. And a 90-day quit. Either party could advise either the other party that within 90 days that you have to move out, and that's how it went.
And we didn't get too far with the contract. I'll just say that. A contract was put in front of us. It didn't go much farther than that because it's budget season, and we needed to obviously get approval here. So it hasn't gone that far. And I think the gentleman is aware that it's on hold. I mean, nothing has been entered into it.
Correct.
We have not put the cart in front of the horse.
So the number's a placeholder then?
Well, what I did, Greg, is we had 166 in there, and I reduced it to 30, figuring we would need some sort of rental for storage. And I didn't know what a right number was when I did that back in December. And then, as I said, this came through the door, and that's how we arrived at that number.
Have you put it out for competitive bid at all, or?
So we didn't announce that we're looking for space to see who would offer us space. So there's other places in town that we can certainly go and look depending on, you gotta give me a range of what we're willing to spend. You weren't here last meeting, but what I did say to everybody is, as the police chief, I'm adamantly against having any of the emergency management supplies impact the police operation. So just because I wear both hats does not mean that these supplies follow me as a person. So the police operation shouldn't suffer, shouldn't have lack of storage or lack of mobility in their fleet storage because I'm the emergency management director. So I think they're important supplies, I think they have to go somewhere. But in order for me to go out and look, I think I need to know where you folks are in an acceptable range. Because if I'm talking to a landlord and he throws out a number and it's nowhere close to what you are, I don't wanna waste my valuable time.
You know, after going to look at that, I would think that we would take an inventory of everything we had, start to sort it out, get rid of some of the stuff we don't have, see what has to go inside, what has to go outside, and have a plan of where we're going before we rent anything. You know, the manufacturer, you go in, you look at it, you say, okay, take everything out, just put it back what you need. I don't know what's there, you don't know what's there, as a total, you gave me 50,000, right?
Well, so I don't know what
It
they're
hasn't
there.
impacted your police operation in that building, and this building you're getting is bigger, so I'm a little concerned about
Well, let's talk about both those things. So first of all, I gave you an estimate on the cost, so I don't know on the top of my head exactly the value of all the emergency management supplies monetarily. I can tell you that everything we have are the things that we need to respond to various types of emergencies. So there is nothing extra. In fact, it could be argued that I don't have enough. But I'm telling you, as your emergency management director, I'm not looking for more. I'm looking for proper, adequate storage of the emergency supplies that we have. Now, this body here knows, the people watching at home or on the internet know, that these supplies were used in 3 major storms, in some shape or form. So emergency management, or emergency planning, or emergency supplies are the easiest things to put on the back burner or totally take off the stove when nothing's going on. But when something happens and these things are needed, it is the most difficult thing for governmental leaders to explain why they were not prepared. And we've seen this on the news over the last decade, right, in different areas that got hit by storms that weren't prepared. In Old Saybrook, we have demonstrated that our emergency management program has reached a level that we are prepared to provide basic needs for a 24 to 48 hour period. That is extremely important because that's kind of the window. 48 to 72 hours is really the window that you have to sustain before federal assistance arrives at your door. So we've done that. I mean, right here, just as an example, this single line sheet, this thick, and I'm not going to pass around because I don't want people's names to be divulged, but these are all the people, and these are all filled out. These are all the people in Storm Irene that came just to get ice, water, MREs, not even the shower list. I have a similar list for Hurricane Sandy. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of town residents that came out, wrote their name, their address, and phone number down to log in their request for supplies and left with that. To these people, during that storm, these supplies that we're talking about were the most important thing on their list besides their own personal safety. So it's my job as emergency management director to advise the first selectman that these things are needed, and when they're used, they're used. So ask Carl during those 2 storms when he stood in front of an auditorium filled with people who were actually sheltering in place at our high school, and the things that they commented about, right? I mean, they were thrilled we had the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're happy for about 24 to 48 hours, and then they want to get the hell out. But
Well, we don't want them there that long, right?
But no, people. I mean, I know you know all that. I mean, walking through the auditorium in the high school during Sandy, the people on the cots, they were so thankful they had a cot, and I was just like,
I'm not saying
It
it's
was
not
amazing. I know
important,
that. I know
but
that.
it should be reviewed, and you should look at what you have. You've told me you've been collecting it for 10 years. I'm just, what has to be and what's inside, what's outside. You had the space over there, so that what you could put inside, you put inside. I don't know.
So the reason why it's been at the police department is remember that building, right, was 10,000 square, it's 20,000 or 21,000 square feet in total. 10,000 of it, or a little bit under, was the renovated office space. Another 10,000 was that open warehouse storage space that you saw. So this building, with 10,000 square feet of storage, was able to accommodate this. The building that we're moving into, yes, Barry, bigger than 225 Main Street, it does not offer us 10,000 square feet of storage. It does not. John can tell you that from being on the building committee. That's not present. This is not, however, a police department issue. And as tough of it is to separate, because I wear both hats, this board has to show the leadership to separate the 2 entities. A cot, a bottle of water, a meal ready to eat, blankets, towels, and pillows are not things that your police department needs to use every day to operate. They are things that your emergency management team needs to have on hand in case we need to use in an emergency. It's really that simple. So they're all town assets. When you say I've been collecting for 10 years, I don't want the public to think I have a 10-year-old bottle of water ready to hand out to them.
I didn't mean that.
All right? What I said to you the other day when we graciously came to tour is that we have progressively, with your support, the Board of Selectmen's support, grown the emergency management program to a point where we're happy. My budget request, as it's been for a couple years now, 0% increase. So we're not looking to grow the program anymore. I want to make sure that we treasure what we have and we don't mistreat it by not storing it properly. Because someday, to these people, it's going to mean the world again.
So what are the alternatives?
Well, the alternatives is I think we need to talk more about the storage, right? So if the Board of Finance, the financial stewards for the town, believe that assets that we already own should be protected, then we have to figure out how best to protect them. And I don't know if it's two separate conversations, if we want to make it two separate conversations between the command vehicle, which is again the only public safety vehicle in the entire town of Old Saybrook that offers any type of office or command environment. Fire department doesn't have that, our EMS professionals don't have that. The police department does, but there's some emergency management funding in there. Remember, that truck has a $120,000 communication system in it that backs up our communication system and serves as an incident command post for any one of our domains of public safety. That should not be sitting under a plastic tarp. Our insurance company values it at $550,000. Close your eyes and forget about personalities and think this. Would you, as a member of the Board of Finance, want a town asset worth $550,000 that has to be maintained at a specific temperature so the contents don't get ruined? Do you want it outside under a tarp? If your answer is yes, I'd ask you to really think hard about that, because many of you park your cars that are worth less than $550,000 in a garage. There is no way this vehicle should be outside. It's been outside because we haven't had any place to put it, but it shouldn't be. This truck should last us 20, 30 years. It's not a debate of whether we should have it or not. We own it. It's a debate of how do we protect our asset. So that's where I think, Mr. Chairman, I think that's where the conversation's got to go.
Well, you say, give you some guidance about how much money, we'd be comfortable with, but I don't think anyone, maybe a couple people are equipped to come up with a number because, all right, here's a number, $1,000. Go out and shop and find something for $1,000. I know you can't do that.
Then don't tell me $1,000.
Right, but I don't know what that number is.
Neither do I. So here's the predicament I'm in, right? So I answer to the CEO of the town of Old Saybrook as the Director of Emergency Management. At his direction and his support and your support, we have built a program. I've been able to house the equipment in a leased facility. I'm now moving into a facility that cannot accommodate that would impair another public safety agency's operation. I have to put the stuff somewhere. I am not a real estate agent. I'm a public safety professional. It's got to go somewhere. I'm in the middle of transferring the police operation. That's quite a task. Right now, I need your help to tell me that you'll have our backs to protect the town's emergency supplies, and I shouldn't spend the next week and a half meeting with various landlords or, storage professionals to see where I can go. Brad made great suggestions today. Brad said, if this was me, I'd put it in a warehouse, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'd have big shelves, we'd double stack, load it. Great. I need shelves, I need a forklift, I have OSHA training. I'll do all that, but it all costs money. So you guys decide what that is. I'm here hat in hand saying, I know this stuff is important. People depend on us to have this at the ready when they need it. No one in this room, probably not even the first selectman, thinks about this stuff as much as I do on a day-to-day basis. But that's okay, because it's my job. But when something happens, everyone in this room will look to me to make sure that we have the stuff that we need. I need your help to put it in its own shelter so we have it when we need it. That's all I'm looking for.
So why don't you,
I'm just,
Go ahead, go
I'm
ahead.
having trouble. I know you want us to separate your distinction of police and emergency management. It's hard though, when you are emergency management and you tout that, and, you know, you have this new police facility, regardless of the mobile unit, but all these supplies, you're the ones that access it all. And you've had it before, so I'm having trouble understanding why it can't go in this new police building.
Sure, so let's explore that. So I am a public safety professional. The police commission hired me to be the police chief. That is my full-time job.
Chief, that's not really the question.
It
I
is,
asked.
because
It
you're
isn't.
tying the two together. So just allow me to answer. That's all I ask.
In the interest of time, you wanna be here for 2 hours again?
I don't, but if you don't let me answer, then it takes longer. Okay?
I'm just asking yes or no, why this stuff cannot go in the police building, as is.
With all due respect, a why is not a yes or no answer. So let me answer your question.
But I don't care about how you became police chief and who elected you police chief. I'm asking you why this stuff can't go in this new police station.
So I'm going to answer. The Board of Selectmen appoints me as the Director of Emergency Management. Okay? I work directly for the First Selectman. These are not Michael Spira's supplies. And we have to stop treating them like they are. You say I tout myself as the Emergency Management Director. I'm proud of the job I do for our town.
That's great, and I'm not questioning that. Why?
If I was
But
to
it's-
retire as the police chief, would you require me to keep all this at my house?
Then the question is, do you want to be the head of emergency management then, and then have someone else the head of emergency management and taking care of all that stuff?
Well,
I mean,
is
I
that
think
what
that-
you're asking me to do, Brett? Because I'm
Well,
confused.
because you're the one asking me if you retire, if you want us to take all this, you take all this stuff.
I'm saying
saying
the
that
equipment
as-
doesn't follow the person. The equipment is owned by the town of Old Saybrook.
Yeah, but the town also owns all the police cars, police building.
So we keep the police things in the police building. We keep the fire things in the fire building. We keep the public works things in the public works building. The emergency management supplies are not tied to the police operation. Insinuating that if I was not the emergency management director, this would not be a problem, I think is the wrong road to take us down.
I respectfully understand your opinion on this.
Carl, I want to
My
ask you a
feeling is
question.
that-
I want to ask you a question. Since you're in charge of emergency management, what are the other towns doing in this situation?
I don't know that the other towns, well, first of all, a lot of the other towns don't have, they don't have police stations, that they're resident state troopers, a lot of the ones.
I'm talking about the stuff. I mean, do other
I
towns
don't
have?
know that they
this?
have all this stuff, Brad.
Well, my point is this.
Oh, they do.
If we're
I
starting,
don't know if they have,
They have stuff.
I'm sure they have some
Yeah,
stuff.
they have emergency supplies,
Right.
absolutely. Like Westbrook has a whole building dedicated to emergency management.
It's
They have an armory that they
I've
put
never
all their stuff in.
researched
I'm not asking for that, right? I mean,
I've never researched what.
Middletown has
Westbrook or Essex.
their own emergency management facility.
Yeah.
They have two.
Well, yeah.
I'm just concerned about if we store the stuff for 5 years. I mean, prior to Sandy, when was the last time we needed this kind of stuff?
Irene.
All right, whoever was first, I don't know who was first. So my
Not that
point
long
is,
ago.
if it's 5 years at 30,000, it's 150,000.
Yeah, it's a
And we're
lot.
storing
It's a lot of money.
$60,000 worth of stuff
It's a lot of money.
that can go bad. I mean, the cots, after a while, either they're gonna get mice in them, or they're gonna rot out, or whatever, and it's just that we're spending $30,000 a year to store $50,000 worth of stuff. It doesn't make any
Okay,
sense to me.
so-
I'd say donate it, give it away. You always know a storm is coming in 10 days, whether it's coming left or right, but it's coming. You can get ready. You can't spend this kind of money.
I don't think you have to spend 30,000 a year, Brad, but I think, a lot of this stuff can be stored, the building we looked at was, I wanna say 4,500 square feet. I mean, you could get something less than that, I'm sure, if we looked around, and we just haven't, because we wanted to come here first. For less than 30, is it 15 or 20? I think it's a temporary, whatever we do is temporary. I don't think it's a 5-year solution. I think eventually some sort of storage building may have to get
We
built.
need to find about 2,000 square feet with 14-foot ceilings. And you
Okay.
need a triple palletizer. You'd have 2 rows, done.
Okay, I mean, all
That's
right,
really what should be done. I mean,
Okay.
if you gotta keep the stuff, and I question, you have to keep all the stuff.
So here's a question, how much does a forklift cost? Because I don't know.
I bought one for $1,000 about 15 years ago, and then I sold it for $1,000. I mean, there's used forklifts all over
Okay.
the place.
So Brad's gonna find me this building, buy me a forklift, buy me the steel shelves. This is what I mean, guys.
You get paid the big bucks, not me.
I'm not, I do, but not in emergency management. So,
I think you do.
I think I don't, but we can take that offline, I'm sure. Look, guys, this is not a Michael Sparrow thing, as I said. These are the town's supplies. We gotta separate it, it's not a police thing. I mean, in the room tonight, I mean, whether you wanna talk to them or not, I have a past fire chief, I have the current fire chief. They can talk to you about emergency supplies. I have police sergeants, a police lieutenant. You have no idea how important it is to people in need when they need these things. Brad, I understand what you're saying, but getting rid of them and going shopping before the hurricane, you do not want your emergency management director in line at Walmart
I'm
or,
not saying that.
you are.
There's gotta be sources, whether, I don't know who the wholesalers are, is it Crisco or Sweet Life or whoever the heck it is. There's gotta be a source where you have an account that you know in 10 days there's a storm coming, you can put them on alert that I need, 20,000 bottles of water and whatever you need, and that, tentatively I'll give you an order.
So here's the problem with that. So those same suppliers supply the big box stores. So if Old Saybrook calls and says we need 4 pallets, or Walmart calls and says we need 6 truckloads, who do you think's getting the attention? Because this happened when we were preparing for the blizzard. So I need to rotate a pallet of water out. We couldn't get a pallet of water from anywhere. I finally had to order it out of state and have it trucked in. It's when an emergency's coming. Think about how the news talks about a storm. From the time that hits the news, people are buying commodities left and right. I can't be in that line. We, as a town, cannot be in that line.
But why is it the town's responsibility to take care of the people when it's on the news for 10 days that we're gonna have a storm?
I think the real issue here is, you're coming to us just before, you knew this police station was coming, you knew we were gonna move it, nobody addresses this till the last minute, like everything else we get. We don't have a plan, so we're gonna grab any building we can. If you put it in the police station right now, you'll figure out a solution to fix it right away, otherwise it's gonna go in storage, and we'll sit in that storage for the next 6 months or 6 years. But it's not, it's again, we keep going with no plan.
So,
It gets thrown on the Board of Finance with no plan, and then we pass it through, and then we sit there like the ball field.
so can I answer your first question first and then address Barry, and then we'll go to your third question? Just so I can keep track of them all. So, Brad, with all due respect, I disagree with you. I think it would be tremendously irresponsible of the town not to have emergency supplies. When Carl raises his hand, he takes an oath talking about the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. We cannot say to our residents during a crisis, you're on your own. And if you didn't prepare, too bad, deal with it. That is not our job. As a public safety professional, I could not stand for such a tactic. It's just not right. So looking into that camera, telling the citizens that if you don't have water or you don't have food during a crisis, you're on your own, is irresponsible of government. We must be there to provide, we must be there to help. Barry, there was a plan.
Yeah.
Here's the plan, in all honesty. So before the construction of the police station, at a building committee meeting, I put on a presentation, filled with passion, by the way, about the emergency supplies that had to be stored. My presentation was backed up by 2 separate architects that did independent space needs studies, saying we needed 4,000 square feet of storage. A lot of that 4,000 square feet of storage was not police equipment. It was emergency management supplies, the same supplies you saw. The building committee decided not with the building project to buy a storage building. I think it was close to $1 million, which I think we all thought was a little high. It was like $700,000. Not to build that because a majority of the stuff was emergency management supplies. The building got cut. Carl and I had lots of conversation during that period. Becky Coffey, I don't know if she's here, she reported on it. Carl said at that time to the building committee at a public meeting and in a memo to me that we will find a storage solution for the emergency management supplies when it comes time for you to move out. We can't look, We could not have pre-rented a building 2 years ago. You just don't do that. So now we're at the time where we're looking for a building.
So in terms of no plan, again, there was a plan, and it didn't make it through the police, and on my recommendation, to keep the price down. This, what we're proposing here, this is temporary, we're not looking to
Where do you see it
rent.
going from here, though?
Eventually, we're probably gonna have to, there's already on the plot plan over there,
Approved by zoning.
approved by zoning, a building. Now, how big that building has to be, you know, but there's already an outline proposed. Now, whether it's a year or 2 years down the line, that was the plan. That was the plan. This is not a 10-year solution. I'm not suggesting it is.
So to give you an example, after a hurricane, I hate to use the G word, the grant word, but after a hurricane, one of the first things that I have to do as the emergency management director on behalf of the town is I submit a grant application to FEMA for reimbursement for just the emergency response and the debris management. These 3 notebooks represent that grant request, that funding request. Every single thing that we do during a response is painfully documented. This is why we have been so successful in recouping almost 100, or in some cases, 100% of all the expenses that the town incurs during an emergency response. That's good news. That should be celebrated, okay? Part of our documentation, oddly enough, pictures are worth 1,000 words. Well, this whole binder is pictures of the town and all of our assets in use. Literally, FEMA looks at the pictures, matches it up to timesheets of our personnel and equipment that we either bought, rented, used, whatever, to verify it, and then they give us a funding formula. You can go through these pictures and see every single piece of equipment that you four saw shrink wrapped and palletized in use and being used by members, citizens of the town of Old Saybrook. These are important things. We don't use them every day. Thank God. These are crisis supplies. I don't want to be in a crisis every day, but we have to be ready. And the only way we can be ready is to have the equipment. And the only way the equipment can be ready is if it's properly stored. I don't want it to cost $30,000. I'm not here wanting it to be a big number. All I'm saying to you is it needs to be sheltered properly. That's it.
When do you need to move it?
Excuse me?
When does it need to be moved?
So we're hoping to end our rental agreement, which is 1.5 years over the lease, April 30th.
Okay.
We don't want the town to incur rent at our current facility during the month of May.
So we have 30 days to find a facility.
Yes, and we've been at it for a while, this
We
conversation.
may have a lead on another one, so we can come back to you and report on that.
So, this shouldn't even be in the budget.
I'm sure it should,
Well-
because it's rent for next year.
When would the budget be approved? Well, after April 30th?
So we have money, can you talk about the monies that will be available
Well,
this
yeah,
year?
but there's also, if we're out of there in May and June, presumably we paid $166,000 in rent this year.
Right.
If we're out of there in May and June, we should be able to not pay that money, which I think is 13 or 14 a month. So that money, in theory, could be available. I thought it was the responsible thing to put a number in here to budget for next year. You're gonna be recommending a budget on April 17th.
Right.
So, I mean, if we,
That makes sense.
look at, you guys, yeah, I mean, you guys are either gonna put a number on it or not. I can come back to you, the chief can come back to you with a different number. You guys do with it what you want. I mean,
A couple of questions.
Yeah.
So it has to be out April 30th, so I understand that. So I do agree we need to store it. But Carl, there's no 4,000 square feet of any public building that we have in the town of Old Saybrook to store it? If the answer is no, that's
no,
that's
the answer,
fine.
no, the answer is no.
The answer is no.
No.
Okay, so then I would say you need to find a competitive bid on what it's, I don't know if 30,000 is a good number. I'm fine with a placeholder.
Yeah.
But I think you need to come back and say you did due diligence on finding 4,000 square feet that meets the minimum requirements, you should define the minimum requirements and put it out for bid,
I don't know if I could bid, I know we could maybe solicit.
whatever.
I don't think I could
Fine.
publicly bid, I think that's a tough bid, but
But
I
it's
understand
kind
what
of
you're saying.
frustrating that we got 30 days.
Why can't we use a real estate agent?
Yeah.
I mean.
Carl wants to
someone's-
engage a
I
real
called
estate
Tim,
agent.
I called Tim Mondrigan, I mean, I just, not that Tim is the guy necessarily to go to, but Tim, I see his sign everywhere, sold, deal pending.
All over town.
That deal's pending for 20 years.
How about where Kevin Gintry is over here?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Geety's another, no doubt, yeah, I mean, Kevin Geety's an owner, and I called Tim to get a price, to see if this was a fair price that, on this building on Custom Drive, and he said about $5.50 a square
Yeah,
foot,
that's
and I ran that by you, John, as you know. So, look, you're meeting again next week, we can get back to you, I mean, with all due respect, I mean, I know we say that a lot at these meetings, 7:30, it's $30,000, and I think the points have been made on this.
Did,
Go ahead.
I have one question. Why, when we built the police station, didn't we provide a space for the truck? We've had the truck for 5 years.
Because the proposal was for about a $700,000 storage facility. And that was just not part of the appetite for that project.
Well, it wasn't in the bond either. I mean, that was my issue with that whole deal.
Sure it was.
No, it wasn't. The
We-
storage building was not part of the covenants.
If it got accepted as part of the whole plan that went to the public, it would have been part of the bond.
Yeah, it would have been, John.
Now it's not part of the bond. So in other words, before the building committee cut that, we had not yet gone to the public,
Oh,
there'd be not referendum. So
It would have
if
been.
you agree to a storage building, and let's be clear, the storage building was designed by the architect based on a space needs study and went out to bid with the construction company cost it. This wasn't a police department thing, this was part of that process.
Seemed like a big number.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we know we can put up a garage that would fit our needs for a heck of a lot less than $700,000.
I would hope.
We know that, and we know it can be finished in a very timely fashion.
And we probably will, at some point. We probably will. And, whether it's a year or 2 years, we probably will.
when the owner of this building came in and asked if you wanted to buy it, did he say how much he wanted to sell it for?
Yeah, it was about, I wanna say 400, whatever, I don't remember
It's
exactly.
assessed for 406.
Yeah, see, I have the card, yeah, so that's the number I remember.
400,000?
406,000.
Seems pretty expensive.
I thought you were talking about building a building over here for 400,000. Didn't I hear
Yeah,
that?
for like $350. What we did is initially, when all this was going on, I sought out some proposals. We went to the same group that, I hate to compare this, but same group that built the public works garage, but we asked for completion, not doing any work ourselves, start to finish done in 30 days. And it was close to like 325,
Was it that
350, all done. I mean, all concrete floor, heating, the whole
I
nine
hate to
yards
admit
done.
it, but it would be cheaper to build a building for 400,000 and be done with it than to be messing around with renting space for 30 grand. I don't like the idea, but I'm just telling you.
That'll be harder to get through than $30,000 right now, okay?
Well, when you look at the monthly payment, if you were financing over 20 years,
All right.
we're looking at this financially.
Yeah, no, look, 30, I don't wanna enter into a 5-year lease for 150 grand to store, that wasn't the intent.
I think you need 2,000 square feet with 14 or 16-foot ceilings.
And a bay for the truck. Do you agree on that? Do you agree that that should be inside?
Yeah, maybe that we should put rows down both sides and the truck in the middle, and you back the truck out, you can move your stuff around if you need to.
The truck's been sitting there for 7 years covered, so we could do that for a while till I would like to see you shrink what you got. We saw on the floor, it could be shrunk into a smaller space and then find someplace to put it. But, all I'm saying is organize what you have so we know what you have, how you can store it, so that you can get to it.
So we feel that's organized, by the way. I mean, that is
But
organized.
that is, it's in place and you've got it uncovered, but I mean, if you really looked at it and organized it the way it should be organized, so you know where everything is, it could be done better and stacked better, I think. So, and you got some things outside, stop signs, I mean, those are small things. I know you wanna keep them from rusting, I understand all that stuff, but right now, because every time we get a plan, it's at the last minute, and then we go ahead with it, and then I don't like it, it never comes out right. And
So
we've done that
understand-
several times now, so I don't like it doing it anymore.
Understand the reason why you didn't see all the supplies stacked up on shelves is because I don't have shelves
I know,
and I don't have a forklift.
I understand
I
that.
can't do that. If I came to you, now let's think about this. If last year I came to the Board of Finance and I said, instead of a flat budget, I would like to buy a forklift and send 3 or 4 people to training so I can store supplies, no one here would have allowed me to do that. No one. So it's easy to sit here and say, stack it high and get a forklift. You guys would never have allowed me to do it. I don't even think that would have got through the Board of Selectmen,
You
quite
guys,
frankly.
forklift, Larry's got a forklift. You know,
Okay.
Public Works has a forklift. It's
But
an
it doesn't
emergency.
travel.
People come together in emergencies. They don't stock everything for emergency. They come together in emergencies.
But the forklift, you don't see that, going 5 miles down the road with
You
a
throw it
red
on a
light
trailer
going
and
to
take
the
it
thing.
over.
All right, all right.
All right, so that's
What if
way
it
off
doesn't work?
base. We have 4 weeks before we have to,
Yeah, you're gonna propose a budget, and this is either gonna be in it or not in it, or some part of it.
So we will follow Greg's suggestion and John's suggestion from the other day of trying to find a different space for less money.
John?
But
That would be
Carl,
a good idea.
what else are you going to do beyond this initial issue that we have going forward to rectify the situation? I mean, you're gonna start work on it, do you have a committee, do you have anything to go forward to answer the plight that we're in?
The plight, the chief did a lot of preliminary work, actually. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
but I mean vis-à-vis the building, like Brad was saying,
vis-a-vis work.
getting a building.
We have a lot of, we have like estimates from 3 or 4 different,
I don't mean temporary-
pre-manufactured.
I don't mean temporary, I mean,
no permanent buildings, like
Right.
pre-manufactured buildings, like a metal building or the wood-studded building. We have,
That was done
So
6
you
months
work-
ago.
yeah.
oh, you're working on that already?
6 months ago.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
But when I brought it in, he said, put that away. So I did.
For 2 years at least.
okay. Any other questions for the emergency management director?
Yes,
Okay.
I have one. Where is the emergency management headquarters?
Where's it, the headquarters?
Yes,
In the basement of Town Hall.
okay. Why do we spend $7,600 on electricity for CLMP for that basement office?
We don't. So the electricity line item, remember that emergency management, about, 5, 6 years ago, became the central spot for all the costs of the town-wide public safety communication system. So the CLMP line item pays for electricity at the 3 communication sites.
Which are,
Where our radio towers are.
okay,
So there's meters there, obviously, to power up radio equipment, the repeaters and things to that effect. So those bills come out of that line item.
so that includes ambulance, police, and fire communications off the towers?
And municipal government. So remember, years and years ago, the first time there was ever consolidation of assets, it was generators, and that was all put under emergency management. And then they took all the fire extinguishers and the fire alarms and the sprinkler systems, they put that under the fire marshal's office. And then when we did the brand new communication system, remember there was a $2.8 or $2.7 million bond. At that time, in concert with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, they decided to house that under one department, so there wasn't line items in all the different budgets, and that became the responsibility of emergency management. So that's why you see a lot of line items that deal with the communication system in this budget.
And Carl, has Larry Hayden taken a look at this stuff for emergency management to see if our telephone lines that are in the basement have anything, can be improved or anything that they've done throughout the town hall that you've talked about previously?
I would have to ask Larry Hayden that question. I mean, he's looked at every line going in and out of this building.
Yep.
So I can answer that. So for the emergency management, the Emergency Operations Center, we don't want to be part of the town system, because a system, like an IP-based system that we're looking into, if that system goes down, there's no telephone lines. So we use old POTS lines. We use regular copper lines it's direct phone lines. So copper lines go to an IP-based system, and then the system goes out. We don't want anything IP-based, we want just straight phone lines. So if you look at the corner of that room over there, Sarge, do you see those blocks?
Yep.
So that is set up for downstairs, because it's a smaller room, to be completely redundant upstairs. So all of our regular POTS lines are there, and our radio communication lines are there, so we can move assets downstairs upstairs like we did during Hurricane Sandy and use this room as an emergency operations center just because it's a little bit more human friendly when you're stuck in a room 12-hour shifts, 7 days at a time. It was just more breathing room for everyone.
Now, the T1 line is just the annual rental for the location in the basement or up here, or does that cover other assets in the town?
That covers just the communication system. So 2 of our radio communication sites see each other via a satellite system, and 1 is done by T1 lines. So we have 4 repeaterized channels. Each channel requires a separate dedicated phone line for the communications data burst to transfer back and forth on.
Okay, and the shelter supplies,
Yeah, shelter supplies, so we spend each year $1,500 to maintain our shelter supplies. So we look at what we have, we look at what has to be rotated. And you'll notice when you know, come budget time, and I usually get this question every year, I'm shocked I didn't get it. We have not expended a lot of our operating budget. So normally a lot of your budgets by December should be 50% expended, right? And follow the percent of the fiscal year going forth. In emergency management, we hold back as much as we can because we want to get through hurricane season and we want to get through blizzard season before we expend any of our other line items that we're not getting recurring bills for. And then we do our maintenance on things, and then we do our any computer upgrades that we have to do, or software upgrades, or system checks towards the end of the year.
so the $1,500 for shelter supplies hasn't anything to do with the downstairs office or this office when you're using it?
It doesn't. So a good example of that is when we had the latest big snowstorm. So we had to buy some supplies to have on hand, and we also bought some supplies for our first responders that were either sleeping at the firehouse or sleeping at the police station to be at the ready. So we used that line item to have commodities on hand to.
Okay, that's good. I have a few more. Anybody else want to ask anything right now?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
You have the floor.
And your radio maintenance and service, that's just for the radios in the town hall here, or is that considered part of the 3 towers, et cetera?
That's for the system.
Okay, system, okay. And equipment maintenance, what equipment do we have? You know, give me a brief overview of that.
So again, that is for our communication system. So we have an immense amount of telecommunications infrastructure that is vital to the successful operation for police, fire, and EMS professionals and municipal government. So those monies are used to maintain that service.
And the emergency oxygen, is that part of the purchase of the machine that you combined with the fire department and the police department and for producing the oxygen? Is that the part of that you're talking about?
So we do it cheaper than that. We have a cascade system. So we don't have a machine. The fire department has a machine to fill their SCBA bottles, and thank God they do. But this is for emergency oxygen. So this is the smaller bottles that any one of our public safety professionals would bring in. We also have a cadre of oxygen tanks for our shelter. So as you can imagine, some of our elderly residents that are oxygen dependent, when they evacuate to a shelter, they need to maintain their flow of oxygen. And the cascade system allows us to refill those bottles and make sure that they're on hand.
When you say cascade system, it's actually a system produces the oxygen, or we buy it and tag team them all together?
So we buy large cylinders, it's called a cascade system. Each cylinder feeds off of each other and they fill the smaller bottles.
Okay. And where are the generators right now that we maintain?
On all of our municipal buildings.
One of them's right outside this door, for instance.
Right, and where are the others?
All of our public safety facilities, so the firehouse, the police department, public works.
So 3.
So all of the generators in town, the generator that's on the mobile precinct, the command vehicle. So every generator in town is there except the ones that the school system has.
Is that 4 then we're talking about?
No, I think there's 7 or 8 generators or some smaller portable generators that are associated with that as well.
Okay,
And that's generally for the maintenance, the recurring maintenance.
maintenance. And those are all diesel or gasoline?
A diesel. Except the new ones, yeah, yes, they're all diesel.
Thank you. That's it.
What was the contractual portion?
Contractual is, So we lease one of our communication sites, so money comes out of there. Some additional funds come out of there for supporting the mobile unit for our CAD system and all of our public safety vehicles. It also, and Dave can attest to this, he was the Board of Finance liaison way back when we were purchasing that $2.8 million communication system. We could either have paid a warranty to Motorola to monitor our system, it was a crazy amount of money, or we can set aside monies to maintain the system as issues come up. So some of these monies are there to, when we lose an antenna or we have a bad cable, rather than paying an outrageous warranty and not getting a lot of return on our investment, we budget funds each year to do that. And as the fiscal year comes to an end, if we're seeing that our maintenance funds are healthy, that's when we do things on our checklist every year from our inspection of, you should replace this grounding wire, or you should do this, or upgrade the software and the radios, and that's where the funds come from to do that.
Is there any reason to keep the line item for the oxygen, emergency oxygen at 14, whereas you only used about 2,000 last year?
Well, last year I didn't have to open a shelter, so I think that that's, again, the appropriate number to have in case I need to fill those bottles. So again, with us looking for no increase in the budget, I think that we're at the appropriate funding level.
How much was used the year prior?
I don't have that in front of me. Do you have the actuals from the previous year?
It doesn't show, it says 0.
Oh, that's because we broke it out. If you remember, when Lisa Carver came, we decided to, instead of all this was lumped up into one fund, everyone wanted to know exactly what it was for, so everything was separated out into line items.
Was there a surplus in your budget last year?
For emergency management, I do not believe there was.
Do you anticipate one this year?
Not at this time. No.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
That was easy.
So, Marine Patrol, one or more of the Board of Finance members asked to see the Marine Patrol and get an overview of that budget. So if we could turn to page 27. And if anyone has any questions regarding the Marine Patrol, feel free to speak up.
So can we speak to the Marine Patrol budget first?
Sure.
Good evening. Chief Spiro here now. So, when we put together this Marine Patrol budget, and it was presented to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen endorsed it, clearly, we thought that this was a budget for a program that was going to have a new vessel. It is obvious that the referendum spoke loudly that we are not going to buy a new vessel in the way that one was initially proposed. So there can be some changes that are made to this budget. In fact, we can revert back to pretty much what we were doing the previous year because we have that vessel. What's happening in Marine Patrol now is I most likely am going to spend about $1,500 to have an independent, commercial, yet public safety person come out and survey the boat, a licensed professional, to give us the proper glimpse of the wear and tear, safety factors, the status of this piece of equipment. From there, I'll have a decision that I have to make as police chief. So last time we spoke about my passion for making sure that my personnel are safe. I need to do this study to make sure that I'm not deploying them in a piece of equipment that's not safe. Certainly aging, certainly needs to be replaced.
How old is it?
The boat is 20-something years old.
1992.
So here's my issue, quite frankly. And I'm not looking to get great debate about this, but I've been coming to you in the Board of Selectmen for a while now about the police boat. A couple years ago, someone said, go get a grant. We tried, we failed, we got one, it was celebrated, and then turned down. I don't know what else to do. I believe that the Marine community deserves policing. I think if you took a look, and Brad, you're great at doing this, so maybe I could ask you to do this for me. If you took a look at the grand list and how many people that either have waterfront property or own marinas or have something to do with the marine trades, how much they contribute to that grand list, I wonder if it's 50 or more %. This community deserves to be policed. The only way I know how to police the waterways is by using a town asset called a boat.
Between 10 and 11%.
So I have to turn to you guys now and say, what would you like me to do? Because I need a new asset. And I need your help. So that, sir, is our opening to Marine Patrol.
So what would last year's numbers be that we put in the budget?
So you can take everything with the exception of personnel, because there was a contractual increase there, and make it exactly the same.
It is, right?
No, there's a couple adjustments that were made this year based on the new vessel, but we don't need to do that. And what I've done tonight is I've asked, we talked a lot about that Marine Strategic Planning Committee. I've said very publicly, I'm not a boater, I don't own a boat, I don't profess to know a lot about boats, but as all good leaders do, they surround themselves with subject matter experts. So my Marine Strategic Planning Committee is here, they're kind of floating around in the audience, they apparently didn't get tickets altogether. But they are here, and I would love for the Board of Finance to interact with my subject matter experts and talk about the program and talk about where we're going. Because without each other, it's going nowhere. And that's not good. So I'm hoping to be a catalyst to conversation, and that's it.
Anyone have any questions?
So, I'll start off. So, it's a good question the chief asked. So, if we are inclined to have Marine Patrol, and if you are inclined to replace the boat, I think you need to do that. Perhaps do it over the course of 2 years. We could get competitive bids. We could put some money away if you want. You could take as a starter if you were so inclined, and wouldn't have to be done in the budget cycle. After the budget, take $30,000 from the capital non-recurring account. Then next year, budget 30 in the budget. You're up to 60. Do your RFP and then fund it the rest with capital non-recurring or there's a way to do it you could do it over 2 years. You could probably get to about 120. I don't know if that suits their needs or not.
So if we take the bids that came in, and we take off that sea burn detector that no one likes, and we take off side scan radar, we're about at $310,000.
Yeah, so you're not even close, but.
I don't know, again, we'll find out with the survey, I don't know if it's gonna last 4 more years. I just honest to God don't.
Right.
But please, talk to, who would like to speak to that, about the status of the boat? Jeff, Ryan,
Nobody.
Grant?
Yeah, Grant's a marine surveyor by trade. I think he could speak to the status of the boat. We've talked about it a little bit before, but I think we've showed pretty clearly that the boat is kind of at the end of its life cycle. So if we can get 2 more years out of it, I think we can get 2 more years out of it. But I'm really not sure.
It depends on what the survey says.
I'm not a professional surveyor. Grant does have some experience in.
As Mr. O'Neill said, we need a plan. We don't want to come in and say, we don't want to go anymore. Let's do it haphazard. Let's come up with a plan and a funding
I
solution.
understand the survey's a good start for a plan, so we know where we're at. That's a good start.
Chief?
I'm just saying, all these years we've been dealing with, I'm gonna use a fire department for instance. We need to buy a fire truck. NFPA says you gotta replace a fire truck every 20 to 25 years. Okay. A fire boat, the police boat is no different than a fire truck. We have been policing these waters since 1963. We have an obligation to police these waters. We have 12 miles of coastline. We cover half of it in New York. The Grand List is covered tremendously by all the people that live on the waterfront and all the marinas. We owe it to them to protect the marinas and everything. And I just, in all the years I've been on the Marine Patrol and everything, just a simple guy blowing through in a 35-foot yacht, smashes through a marina, smashes the boat up against the dock, does $1,200, $1,500 worth of damage to the boat. That person deserves protection, just like anybody else in the whole town, just like in Route 1, when they drive a car down Route 1. They deserve protection. We have to be out there to enforce the law, and we have to do it on the water. So there's no doubt that has to be done. This should be treated just like the fire department does. They gotta replace a piece of equipment, a fire truck. There's never any squabbles about it. It's gotta be replaced. Yep, they got shot down in the federal grant, I think it was a mishaps. We lost out, I think we shot ourselves in the foot, that's my personal opinion. But somehow, in the next 2 years, we have to address it. I've been on this boat, I've worked on this boat for the last 23 years. I was instrumental in getting this boat from the Navy back 20 years ago. It has to be replaced. The town has to come up with some sort of plan, and it needs to be done. You're right, Barry, there has to be a plan, and it needs to be done. We can't just say eliminate it, buy a fiberglass, $150,000 boat. It has to be something to meet the mission. You go out there at 2 o'clock in the morning, you go through that break wall, and anybody that knows anything about boating, at 2 o'clock in the morning in a storm to go help somebody, it's not a fun place to be. You have to have a platform underneath you. And I've been working for CETO for many years. I've been out there at 2 o'clock in the morning to go out through that break wall, and it's not a fun place to be. And there's times I turn around and call the people on the boat and say, we're not coming, hang on. We'll do the best we can when we get there. So you have to come up with a program to replace this boat. I'm telling you from a professional point of view, as both a recreational boater, a commercial guy that works for CETO, and a guy that's working on Marine Patrol. Thank you.
So Grant, you were saying, I'm sorry, Grant got cut off.
It's easy, I mean, the boat's been maintained pretty well for the last 23, 24 years. It was not a boat designed to be used for what we use it for. It's too small to begin with, doesn't have enough equipment on board to begin with. It's a great river boat, but it doesn't belong outside the breakwater if there's any kind of seas running. Scott's done an admirable job keeping it going. But you know, and can we make it last 2 more years? Sure. We can have that police cruiser parked in front of the police department up on the grass. We can use that every day too. We just got to keep putting money in it, keep putting money in it, keep putting money in it. And that's what we're going to do here. So you know, you talk about spending $15,000 or $18,000 to store 50,000. It's the same thing. We're spending money to maintain something that doesn't quite do the job. You know, it's only a matter of time when it's going to create a problem, or somebody's going to get hurt, or we're not going to be able to fulfill the mission. So we really need to think about it. You know, kind of Carl's way of looking at it is probably the most logical way. You might have to double or treble the numbers just to get where we need to go. But you know, it's sad to say that I think we missed a good opportunity this past month.
All right. Are there any questions on this year's budget request?
I'm just curious, how many hours are used by personnel on this boat?
We'll start with Barry, can you share?
Sure, I can answer that. So we generally, for patrol, which is the primary mission of this boat, we use 1 civilian boat handler and 1 police officer. Cost is about $70 an hour for personnel on the boat.
Who's a civilian handler?
Grant Westerson, Carl Ponzillo, Ken Reed. So if you divide that out, it's 515 total hours of service. We do about 20 hours per weekend, typically, Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. We do Memorial Day, Labor Day, and July 4th. We do about 36 total extra hours for those weekends, and that's where we come up with our 36050 number. Gives us about 24 weekends of patrol. That doesn't count any special events, weekday patrols, marine emergencies, or anything of that nature.
Can you give us an idea of how many calls you get, specific calls for use?
I don't have that information with me.
When can you find out that information and bring it back to us?
Well, we can get that, but understand that some calls, marine calls, go unanswered. For example, someone calls and says there's a jet ski too close to the swim area at the town beach. If it's on a Tuesday and the boat's not in the water, there's no personnel for it, we don't go. We just don't go. We do the best we can on the land, but generally when you stand on the beach and you go like this to the jet ski, come here, they're not necessarily inclined to immediately beach their jet ski and speak to the police officer. So there are many calls during the summer that we probably won't be able to share the statistics on, because data mining is going to take time and personnel, and I'm not sure we're going to invest in that, where we just don't go.
Can't you data mine with the CAD system?
We can. It's very, very difficult, John.
What's the difference whether it's 2 calls or 20 calls?
And it takes...
It means 1 life, that's all that matters.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear either one.
So it takes time, and I don't have the people right now to do that. I just don't.
Is it working? I mean, are you satisfied with the system?
The CAD system is, yeah, I'm very satisfied with the CAD system. I think what people forget, I don't want to get too much on a CAD tangent with Marine Patrol, but it stands for Computer Aided Dispatch. The function is call taking, caller interrogation they call it, getting the right resources, the closest resource. It's not necessarily meant to be a management system that gives you data on how to operate.
So you don't have any retrieval capacity?
We do, but it takes time. So none of those crystal reports are set up. We have to work with the vendor and pay the vendor to get certain reports. We don't do that. So standard reports are like call volume per time of day. So if we were a big city police department, I could say, wow, look at that. Our highest call volume is between 6:30 in the morning and 7:30 in the morning. So instead of having shift change at 7, I'm gonna have an overlap guy that works 12 to 8, and he gets those calls, so there's no overtime. I don't have the personnel to do that, so those reports are interesting, but irrelevant to my operation, because I don't have the assets to move around.
Is your scheduling of personnel, police personnel on the boat scheduled through the department, or is it scheduled separately
Through the department.
through the department?
So it's on a rotation basis. So imagine this, you're a police officer, right? You're scheduled. You don't get many weekends off. So you have to make the decision, do you want to voluntarily sign up for Marine Patrol and work your only Saturday off or your only Sunday off that month? Or do you choose not to work? So we don't find that there's a lot of people that are very eager to take their only weekend off and put on their uniform and go police the waters. So there is a small cadre of people that do that. However, it's important for all of our personnel to be trained for emergency response. For example, it's a Wednesday morning, no one's scheduled for the boat, and there's an active domestic in the middle of the Connecticut River. A boat handler has to come, a cop that's working that area gets on the boat, and they go out to police that incident.
So consequently, everybody that works a time and a half on the river, correctly?
Well, not necessarily. So on those shifts that you talk about, yes, but remember the police officer contract is very specific on when you actually earn time and a half. So they have to actually work 40 hours in a week to earn time and a half. So if they're on a 32-hour rotation that week and they work the Marine Patrol, they're working at the first 8 hours at straight time. So it really depends on where they are in their schedule, whether they qualify for overtime or not. The boat handlers are all straight time. No boat handler works in excess of 40 hours a week. So we don't do more than 40 hours a week of patrol.
Any other questions with regard to the budget request?
So Chief, if this was the make or break question about whether or not other financial considerations go with this Marine budget, how long would it take for you to get the answer that Rec was asking for about how many calls that it takes for the Marine?
So first of all, I don't think it's a make or break question.
If
Because-
it was,
but
so
it's
how
not.
long would it take you
It's
to
not.
acquire that information that she asked for? You
So,
haven't answered that question.
okay, I have not. And I'm gonna tell you, I think your statement's irrelevant because part of our mission is patrol. So just like we patrol through neighborhoods, we patrol the river and the sound and through marinas. There is no data that captures that. We know which marinas we go into. If we had the new boat, we would have GPS. I could have given you all the stats. We don't have that on this current boat. So as we enter a marina, sometimes we call in and say that we're there, an old-fashioned patrol check. Remember, we used to fake patrol checks and fool the burglars on your midnight shifts? We still do the same thing, only we don't do what you did. But when we're in an area and we're conducting a very detailed patrol check, we call it in and we document it. But if it's not documented, it doesn't mean that we weren't there. So every minute of every shift spent patrolling the river and the sound and going in and out of marinas, we're not constantly recalling that. That omnipresence reduces damage because it slows down boats. So if the make or break question, which I do not feel it is how many calls did we have last year? We'll do our best to do that. But I need the Board of Finance to know that my primary mission right now is moving a police operation from Custom Drive to Lynn Street. And it's not spending time data mining or having my IT director do that when he's saving the town probably $100,000 wiring a new building. So if we had 4 calls last year, or 8 calls last year, or 20 calls last year, 1 call justifies the Marine Patrol with the addition of our patrolling responsibility. You gotta remember, if you're a member of the Marine community, you are entitled to be policed, just as you are if you own a home on Schoolhouse Road. It's the same thing. You're a taxpayer, you're entitled to our services. The only way to get somewhere on the water is by boat.
I could be wrong, but I don't think there's any question that there's gonna be Marine Patrol. I said it before, unless the river dries up and the sound dries up, there's gonna be a Marine Patrol. You know, all the discussion about the boat and how much the boat and how to fund the boat, I mean, it's not in this year's budget. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about this particular budget.
I have a couple more.
You go right ahead.
Chief, who decides where the boat is kept and who does the maintenance and repairs on the boat?
I decide where the boat is kept, and it's in a strategic location, and it must be a good one because we're parked right next to the fireboat. So it seems to be a good spot for us both to be in. And as far as maintenance goes, it depends on what goes wrong with the boat. So we need certified people on that specific piece of equipment to do that. Thank God we have many people in Old Saybrook who are talented and do a lot of pro bono work to make sure that our vessel is as safe and ready as possible. But just like a good mechanic, you can only do so much with a 20-plus-year-old car. You can only do so much with a 20-plus-year-old vessel.
Is there a reason why we don't rotate the boat from one marina to the other, or rotate our maintenance repairs similar to, at one time they had a wrecker rotation log where we rotated through the people that we give our services or we request our services from?
So I'm happy where the boat is placed. I think it's in a very strategic location, and again, that's my decision. And we're very pleased with those people who are very familiar with the boat. So imagine I took this boat to a brand new marine mechanic. They would be thrilled, right? I'll give you a list of everything that needs to be done with this. Having someone who has history with the vessel, that knows, quite frankly, the very professionally installed, yet can be categorized Band-Aids that have been placed on the boat is important to keeping maintenance costs down. So from being a fiscally responsible standpoint, I think that the current vendors that we're using are working for us fantastically.
I understand that explanation.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to your point about the replacement of the boat, so, is it a thought? Is it something we need to think about to put aside in this budget some sort of capital monies for a new boat? So if everyone here says we know we're gonna have Marine Patrol, that's a consensus. And everybody here says, all right, we get it, you need a new boat in some capacity. There's certainly a certain amount of money that can be set aside in this year's budget, if you so choose, to put towards that cause. Nothing you put aside, I'm sure, is going to fulfill the entire fiscal need. But 5 years ago when I came to you and I said, can we start putting money away? And it was no, 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 get a grant, get a grant, get a grant. We wasted 5 years of putting money away. If I get a survey back and it says, this is not a good decision to keep this boat in the water, I have to come back to you and say, what are we gonna do at Marine Patrol? So to Barry's point about having a plan, let's start a financial plan.
Let's get the survey first, and then we'll talk about it.
I asked for the survey at the last meeting, and they told me it wasn't worth spending the money.
Well, it's not, because I think we have, here's why. So when I look around the room, I have licensed Coast Guard captains, I have surveyors, I have Coast Guard captains, I have people who represent the marine community and are master technicians on marine vessels. When these folks tell me something, I believe it. But here's what I know, right? And we all know this. If you leave town and go speak as a keynote speaker, you're a genius. You come back to your own home and speak about the same thing, you're not viewed as one. So if I have to spend $1,500 of taxpayer money to convince this board that what they're saying is actually true, then I'll do that. I don't think it's money well spent, but at this point, based on my history, can I have a vote? Can I put money aside? No. Get a grant. We tried, we got one, we failed at referendum. I don't know what else I can do to prove to you that we need a vote other than spend $1,500. So that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. What would have been different with this though, is that on July 28th, it was announced that you were gonna get a grant at your police commission meeting. We didn't get wind of it till the first Tuesday of October, that at our next meeting, you were gonna talk about it. And hindsight's terrific, but it would have been nice to come in and say, look, we got this survey, our vote's, no good in September. And, I believe, we all like to know up front. And had we had more time, as he says, everything's always jammed down our throat. If you'd come to us in September and said, hey, I got a grant, guys, for a boat, start thinking about it. I've had a survey, the boat's no good. I think the whole thing would have been a lot smoother instead of jammed down our throat.
And I don't want to debate with you, Brad, but I think the Board of Finance, when you guys told me to get a grant 2 years ago, I think that was pretty good knowledge that I was pursuing a grant for the boat. Asking you 5 years in a row for money to put aside for a boat, I think is pretty good notice. As far as the timing, I wish a lot of things were done differently. We spoke about some of those things last meeting. I wish there wasn't such a misinformation campaign that happened prior to the referendum. Sadly, election laws prohibited me from standing up on a mountain and trying to explain things to people. We just were not allowed to do that by state statute.
But your best salesman would have been the 7 of us had we been informed.
Well, I think we did the best job we could to inform you. I think that the 2 sergeants that did a presentation went through that grant thoroughly. It was recommended by the Board of Selectmen, endorsed by the Police Commission. I mean, at some point, I don't know what else more I can do to show you that this has been validated at many levels. I just don't. If a $1,500 survey does it, I'm all over it.
Chief, I asked the police commission about who the liaison from the police commission is to the Board of Finance. Now I ask you as the head of Marine Patrol, is there a liaison from the Marine Patrol to the Board of Finance?
No. Nor has the Marine Patrol budget ever been spoken in a budget workshop during my tenure in the last 6 years as police chief. So I find that, I gotta tell you, bizarre.
Yep.
Completely
Any other
bizarre.
questions? All right, thank you. Would you like to now speak about the WPCA?
No, but can we just do the grant so I can leave?
Sure.
Or do you want to talk about septic systems first?
So,
Septic systems first? No problem.
stay in order.
All right.
I enjoy a good Board of Finance meeting, so I will.
So the WPCA is here.
Okay,
Thank
now
you
on
for
to
coming.
something easier.
So you hope.
But if they get $30,000 to store their WPCA truck, just understand you're going to see passion again.
That was the first thing we were gonna add.
What page?
Page 50,
Page 50.
and in conjunction with that, I think you should also look at all your salaries in the very back, and go to the just put a placeholder in your book for the WPCA salaries, the breakouts with all the health insurance and life insurance and pension.
Where's that?
It's actually the second to the last page in your
29?
book.
Do you have a page number?
29?
No, there's no
Second
page.
to last page.
Yeah,
The whole
it's,
book?
Last tab.
so
Yes,
page
the whole
50,
book.
page 50 is the budget, okay? Then go to, there's just this one page in the back of the book, go to the page right in front of that, and you'll see. I just think it tells a little bit of the story. So, anyway, going back to page 50, I have, first of all, you guys, Gracia Lewis and Jim Vinoli, Steve Mangillo and Lisa Carver, not together, are on vacation this week.
You had to
And-
say that.
And so they're both away. Steve visits his daughter, I think, in South Carolina. So Jim, have you guys met Jim before, ever?
Hi,
That's Jim. He says a lot. Jim, just tell them what you do for the program and maybe a little bit of your background, just quickly.
I'm a retired professional engineer, licensed in New York and New Jersey. I moved to Old Saybrook in 2012 and took a job as inspector. Since that time, I became site manager. My prior experience started in 1968. Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. Put in several years with Malcolm Perney, 2 different stints. I was chief engineer for the Paparazzo Brothers in Southbury, Heritage Village condominiums, for a couple of years. Then with private consultant. And I formed my own company, and at the same time became town engineer for the town of Mount Pleasant in Westchester County, New York, and I retired from it. We had 27,000 residents, 157 miles of roads, had our own water and sewer distribution system. And immediately prior to that, when Public Law 92-500 was passed, which the money we're getting now is the Clean Water Fund, is a residual of that original program. I administered that as a private consulting engineer for several townships and several municipalities in New York State, working directly with the DEEP equivalent, which is the DEC in New York State, with grants and programs. But we didn't install septic systems. We installed about 55 miles of sewers and many pump stations and whatnot.
So Jim works very closely with Steve Mangello, who's the program manager now. And so anyway, the budget before you, it shows on page 50, and Gracia and Jim are here to answer some of the questions if you'd like. Shows a 3.8, entire budget is 268. So, you know, let's not forget that this is probably the largest capital program this town has ever undertaken. It's authorized at $43 million in total. Not all of that is a general obligation bond, but it's still authorized at that amount. It involves 1,900 properties, and you know, I don't want to retrace the program, but doing nothing is not an answer. You know, we're under a stipulated judgment to move forward with the program. We have addressed, out of 1,900 properties, addressed, and that means either gone on the property or found the property, you know, minor repairs or to be in compliance. 500 almost of the 1,900. The plan is to do about another 500 properties between this year and next year. It's aggressive, it's a lot of properties. When you're doing them, 25 bid out at a time, that's a lot, but that's what we're hoping to do. The problem areas are obviously going to be Chalker Beach is problem area. You know, houses are very close together. Some of the areas in Indian Town and Saybrook Manor also, but we're trying to work towards some solutions there. So the budget, given the size of the program, is incredibly modest. If you were to ask me, I think we made it. This board, with my recommendation, made the right move a few years ago when we hired a program manager. I can assure you that's worked out well. And anybody who's touched this program in the last 2 years know that having Steve, and now Steve and Jim and the team in the back office there working, the program, you know, look, the implementation was not perfect, but it has gotten better. So when you look at the salaries, you know, and this is where I know there's some confusion sometimes, but, you know, you look at the salaries and you see Robbie Marshall at 76%. Now, that means the town funds 76% of her salary, 24% of that is clean water funded. And what that means when it's clean water funded is we will put in, and on a very small scale, a requisition to the state DEP for 24% of her salary. and we will get back 25% of that in a grant. 50% of that will be a general obligation bond of the town, and 50% will be a benefit assessment eventually, and 25% will be a GO obligation of the town. Okay, so, you know, it's not easy to explain, but that's why the operating budget that's why we have as many folks as we do working on this program, yet the personnel for the program is 163, all in. Because 25% is grant funded, 50% is benefit assessed on the property of those salaries, and 25% is a GO portion, general obligation bond of the town. That's not unique to Old Saybrook. That's happening all over the country, all over the state, that same formula.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
When you're looking at, the salary there, we're 76%.
yeah.
Is the town paying the full health insurance, the FICA, et cetera?
I believe we are paying the full on that. Gracia,
Yes,
is that- yeah.
But you are allowed, under Clean Water Fund rules, to mark up the hourly rate by the benefits that accrue to the individual. And so we requisition not just the 24%, but the 24% plus benefits.
Yeah,
And there's a calculation done July 1st of every year and sent up to D.
So when you're looking at, the coordinator's salary, her insurance is, about 60% of her salary. So are you bumping that up in recovering that 60%?
No, I am only recovering 24% of that 60%.
Right.
So like on 26,000, you're only gonna get maybe 6,000. So we're paying 20,000 insurance.
I mean, it's a health insurance. She's
No, I
out.
understand.
Yeah, I mean-
It's just that when we're looking at this percentage
Yeah,
formula.
you also have to understand that she is the only individual
No, I know what
that's
you're gonna say.
getting health insurance, so that,
Well, you have to look at everything, pensions,
It's true.
right,
Yeah.
and that
Et
is
cetera.
all, that's all part of it.
She's the only one? You don't get it?
no, Lewis does, I mean, Gracia.
Cameron Evangelisti does. Also.
I declined it, and Melissa has her own,
Okay.
and
So,
and the percentages, to finish that thought, the percentages are different for each person.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Okay, my
Yeah.
only, it's a ridiculous amount, 42.98 or something like that % of my compensation is clean water funded. 34% of the administrative assistance is clean water fund. They're called force accounts under this program, and the percentages are approved by Dennis Greasy, and he assigns what percentages based on the job description and the tasks that each person is doing.
Jim's name isn't on this list. You
Right.
just started?
Contract,
No.
contract.
Oh, he's a contractor.
Yeah.
Oh, the site manager is a
There's
contractor?
a bunch of guys in the field, and they are contractor consultants, and they're 100% clean water funded.
So how many do you have?
There are 3 inspectors and myself downstairs.
Okay, so there you go.
So you have four people, and they're totally CWF funded.
Yes.
On everything, insurance, the whole bit?
Well, we pay
There's no
20, the
insurance.
town's paying 25% of that clean water fund, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there's,
Yeah, hold on, yeah.
Mm.
So clean water funding, the formula is 25% grant, 50% benefit assessment, and 25% general obligation bond. It's not for, no, I'm not suggesting it's free money, but
Okay, so there are 4 people.
On cameras, you were just paying his benefits? He's in Public Works budget? Is that how that
he's
works?
not in the public works budget.
Well, we don't see a salary in here, all I see
Okay,
is
so somehow he, years ago, before he got into the union, and he is treated differently. I don't know how that happened.
So is he fully funded by Clean Water? He's one of the guys fully funded by
He-
Clean Water,
he-
except for the benefits?
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
So is he 5? Is he
Huh?
one of the 4? Is he one of the 4?
He's one of the 3 inspectors.
Okay.
Yes.
It's a big yeah, go ahead.
As far as making the dates, we had dates at 2/17 we're supposed to be done. We're obviously not gonna get there from here. Wasn't it the end date, we were supposed to be done with the whole program by a certain date?
No, the
They
consent,
extended it out?
actually, the consent decree is September of 19.
Okay.
There was another date this year of September 15, obviously, we're not gonna make
Yeah.
that for phase 2. We actually, and this is off topic, so I don't wanna get too far into it, but we just did a whole revision where we're trying to look at the whole program globally. So some of the engineering we're gonna be spending over the next 6 months is going to be looking at Chalker Beach and Indiantown and Saybrook Manor, which are really phase 3 and 4, not necessarily phase 2. But we were able to get approval from DEEP because we want to start looking at a solution for those neighborhoods, in addition to going after our conventional systems that should be in phase 2. There are a lot of moving parts, because the funding has to line up with the phase, and getting our attorneys and DEEP and DPH on board was not an easy task. And these guys worked really, really hard at it, and the funding has now gone through for phase 2 today, actually.
Yes, it was.
It's signed, so complicated. It's worth spending a workshop on this again after the budget season. It truly is, because it is, number one, it's somewhat interesting, and number two, it's, I think, quite esoteric is probably the better word than complex. Because of the clean water funding, because of the phases, because we were operating under a consent decree, there are some new members of the board, and I think it would be worthwhile to just kind of come in here and talk about the program. I really do. And we can do that in May or June. Nice summer night.
Outside maybe.
No, it's gonna be snow.
We could do it over a septic system, huh?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Why did the mileage go up so much?
Well, if you look back, I guess the question is, why did it leave it at 1,200 for so many years? Because the actual has been 23, 24, 100 annually. This year, we're going to be 25, somewhere between 25 and 26. And we thought that it was time to actually put out a number that reflected an actual. The additional was not just a rounding thought, but because we are doing so many properties in 15, 16, we just anticipated that there would be additional mileage, and this was our estimate as to what that
Is that mileage paid to whom? Because it's our trucks and our cars, so who gets the mileage?
No, this is only mileage accrued by our employees in their own personal vehicles. This is not if they're driving the red van, they're not submitting mileage. If driving their own truck.
So what is this, to classes, to something else, or what do you give mileage for, particularly?
Well, do they drive to the site?
They drive to the sites, they drive to pick up materials from time to time.
So the vehicles that the WPCA has are, the former First Selectman's vehicle,
Yep.
which is, I don't even know what year that is, 2000 maybe.
It has
And
150,000 miles.
and the old Park and Rec, that's the old Park and Rec van?
Yep,
So, those are the two vehicles. There's no new vehicles in this program.
Well, I
or
understand that, I
anything
know
like
that. I'm just curious about the mileage, because
Yeah. So, I think the guys go to some of the jobs themselves.
because we could have, the white truck is needed to pull the
Excavator.
around, which would be going in an entirely different direction than installations we've got going over in another part of town. And it's not a taxi service, so the guys drive their own vehicles.
are you paying from here to the site, or from their home to the site?
From here to the site, everything is from the town side to the site.
I understand.
And what do you use the van for, if they're using their own cars?
Well, the van is used typically to follow the white truck because it's inappropriate to drive the truck and the trailer when you need to get things. So usually two or three fellows involved with the soil testing, which the white truck is pulling the excavator for. So if you need supplies or whatnot, you're able to use the red van for that.
Gracia, how do you get fuel for the vehicles?
The highway garage.
Highway garage.
With a key fob.
Yeah, the prepaid is absolutely wonderful. Then I have a budget, I have a dollar figure. I don't have to worry about, next month it's gonna be 500 and I'm gonna have to explain that. The prepayments on the diesel and the gas are
So,
I mean, part of the
working
town's,
beautifully.
town's
highway,
program,
at
yeah.
the Public Works garage, same
Mhm.
way the other vehicles do. There's a key
Key
fob.
fob.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah.
That tracks the mileage
Do
and,
you track your mileage on the car and the truck to see if there's something wrong with it? So if 1 week you're getting 100 gallons of gas for 10 miles, and the next week you're getting 100 miles for 10 gallons, do you find a difference in discrepancy there, and you pick up on it that way?
Well, we try to keep the vehicles in
Yeah.
good tune.
I mean, you can see if there's a huge discrepancy, then it alerts you that something's wrong.
Right.
And how do you find the maintenance on the large white truck and the excavator? Everything running well with that?
Yes, we just had them both serviced over the winter in preparation for the soil tests that are coming up.
So it's been a good asset to the program?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
We were here when the former person involved, Mike Evangelisti, made a point to get the truck and stuff, and the Board of Finance had to approve some of the money for that, so wanted to make sure it's still a good target program,
Yeah.
good target truck to be working with the program and stuff. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would
Yeah.
encourage, Barry knows it all too well. You know how the program works, and you followed it very closely to your credit. But it's a big program in this town, and in the next 2 years, a lot's gonna happen. Because we're either gonna be on the mark or gonna be scrambling, and we're really at a critical junction. And we're not alone. I told you Old Lime's about to get a consent order. I mean, it is, I tell you, they're tough up there. And so we're moving along on this program. Not everybody's happy. I walked into this, like, basically the day I was sworn in was the day the first tanks were going in the ground. And so there was a lot going on. And I don't know that anybody could have predicted 10 years ago when we were formulating the program what it was going to look like in 2015. And there's been a lot of trials and tribulations, and, you know, I think we have some good people on board, so.
I got one more question. Gracia, is there anybody here from the WPCA commission tonight?
No,
Okay. And do you know if they have a liaison from the commission to the Board of Finance?
It's me.
It's Barry.
I believe
No,
it's
the
there.
Board of Finance to
He's
the
talking
commission.
about
They
their
don't have liaison the other way.
Okay.
It's only our
It's
liaison.
not official, but we see Barry all the time, so
Good,
we
all right.
figured.
So you can talk to them if you need something.
So we're on TV together, right?
Yes, we are.
That's it, thank you. All right.
Anything else?
Thank you.
How much have you used on advertising and postage this year? Last year you used like 3,500,
Yeah.
and how are you doing this year?
I do not have that figure with me. There would be 5, probably 6 advertisements for invitations to bid. Each one of them hits around $600. In addition to that, all the notices that have to go in the paper for benefit assessment. We've been able to restructure that so it's all going into the Harbor News and in different configurations that still meet the absolute letter of the law. So other than the big enormous one-pager of last week or the week before, we've been able to keep that lower than we anticipated. I would guess when we are done, we're going to be somewhere around $8,000, give or take. Because the previous, we did maybe 2, maybe 3 invitations to bid and no benefit assessment.
Now you have the mailing twice a year for the benefit assessment.
Yes,
So
everything, this is kind of this big, you know, and not only under the postage, we can send out benefit assessment stuff, not certified mail. But the Connecticut River Area Health District requires that what we send out on their behalf be certified. And one certified letter is over $7 now. And we're sending them out 100, 150 at a time.
Now, I know in the write-up in the back, you said you're not planning any new hires. Now, he's saying that you're expanding your program. How are you gonna do that?
Didn't say we're expanding the
Well,
program.
you're going to 500 in a concise
He
period
said the
of time.
plan is to do 200, 500 over the next 2 years. So they feel they can do it with the personnel they
And
have.
you did 500 in how many years before? 5 years.
Well, no, since we started the program, listen, it's ambitious. They wanna get,
I'm only asking if they have enough personnel to do
They-
the job. That's the question.
It's more weather related than
I
it
mean,
is
is it
personnel, isn't it?
realistic even to plan that way?
We believe we do at this moment. I think it's going to be a stretch, and we'll have one inspector covering 2 contracts from time to time. There may come a need for another fellow, but for now, we're gonna give it a try.
And does your inspector stay on the job for the full 8 hours at that one site usually?
The answer to that is no. The workday generally goes from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And
Excuse me.
it's not just a matter of the inspector arriving at a site, parking his vehicle and remaining there until 5 o'clock to watch the contractor. He also has interface with all the other property owners in that contract. To date, the contracts have been, I don't know, 22 to 25 parcels. We're increasing the number of parcels per contract, 27 to 30. We have a certain mandate to meet, these deadlines that we're talking about. So when the inspector comes to the job, first he reports here, and that's when the mileage clock begins. He goes to the site, he coordinates with the contractor, and usually stays there for a bit. But then he has to go to 1, 2, or 3 other homes to meet with them to what we call a green envelope now. Used to be a blue folder. And that has all the information for the particular lot, for the program, the bids that were received, the design for your particular home. And these, we're doing those now for the next contract that's coming out. And he might meet with 2 or 3 homeowners, so there's travel between those homes. There's also occasion when he has to return to CRAD over to Saybrook Junction and come back out and then be with the contractor. Now clearly you don't do this at critical times of the installation when the elevation is determined by setting a tank or setting a D-box. Typically you do it when a less important operations occurring, backfilling perhaps, or bringing in topsoil for property restoration. Right? So this goes back and forth, and working from 7 to 5, that's generally a 9 or a 10-hour day. Okay, so you can see to hit 40 hours, 4 days a day. So we have some juggling to do, and it's not an exact science, we just have to handle it. So there might come a need for another fellow to get involved. One of the issues we have, of course, is in Connecticut here they have what's called as Phase 1 certification, which is the first step in becoming a full-blown sanitarian. In Phase 1, you're taught about septic systems, how they work, what's important, and presumably if you're here you should know how to calculate slopes and minor things like that. So they like to see a Phase 1 certified individual on the site. Right. It's not guaranteed you can have one there for all the operations, nor is it needed, really. If the guy's just backfilling with dirt, so you have to balance a lot of things. And we try and do that, and we try and keep everyone's hours as close to 40 as possible. Sometimes you run over a little bit, but can't be avoided.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gracia, about
When
last year,
site managers stay on a job, how long does it take to complete the job?
I'm sorry?
How long does it take to complete an installation assigned to that one
A
site?
typical installation is a day and a half.
Day and a half.
Then comes the restoration. And that sometimes occurs within the 2 days. There are times when it's a bit longer.
But a day and a half is
Clearly,
I'm only interested in the average, a day and a half?
generally a day and a half, 2 days.
And how many months a year can you do installations?
This year, not a lot of months. Had a bad
Well, you've had
winter.
5 years' experience, what's been your experience?
Yeah, well, there was a delay this year. So I would say a good 10 to 11 months of the year we could do install.
That many?
It's all weather dependent.
Yeah.
And you might have several contractors working, John, on several different contracts that are out. So it's not just 30 homes at a time. You could have 60 going at a time, in theory, or overlapping, or.
Well, that's why I asked if they were assigned one at a time to an installation.
So they'll move around.
So I can compute exactly how many can be done.
Yeah.
Our intent this year is to, we're obliged to put in generally 200 systems a year in order to meet our deadline. pursuing the program destination on parallel tracks. One track is the conventional system installation, which is the 200 or so a year. And the other is the community system, which the engineers are being hired for. That's to replace, hopefully, the AT systems, which really never came to fruition in Connecticut.
Don't go too far into the weeds on this right
Oh.
now. We'll come back and talk.
So anyway, we have about, we anticipate about 700 to 750 conventional systems to be installed, hence 200 per year. So what we'd like to do is give like 90 to 100 days in one contract. That's consecutive calendar days for one contract. So halfway through that contract, so maybe a month or month and a half following the award of one, we would hopefully award the second one. So there's an overlap. And then if we continue with that time schedule, upon completion of the first contract, the third contract would begin. So we have a minimum of 2 contractors working simultaneously. Now hopefully, we're having some difficulty in getting contractors interested in the program for any number of reasons, depending upon who you are, you have a different opinion. But we're actively pursuing that. The last time we contacted like 99 people on an email, from suppliers to contractors, engineers, all kinds of people. So we're desperately to get more contractors interested. So hopefully we can, build a stimulus and get the ball rolling a little faster.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks very much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for staying, guys.
Selectmen's report.
No, let's just move on. Selectmen, oh, yeah. Well, I thought it was my normal report, that's why.
No, it's these two.
So, you were emailed the Making Places grant. I think I mentioned it last time, didn't I?
Yes.
I did. And so, this is strictly a marketing report for the old trolley building. Tom was at our meeting. Tom knows the building pretty well. Right, Tom?
I know of it. It
Actually,
was around
behind the
before I
fort.
was, though. So if that's what you're getting at.
No, it's not. Look, part of Mariner's Way. It's trying to figure out a use for this building. It's trying to reinvigorate that whole area, Ferry Point. This is a building that we've kind of looked at for the last few years, trying to figure out what to do with it. I saw this grant come across my email. I sent it over to Susie. I said, what do you think for that Cat in the Hat? We call it the Cat in the Hat building. And she applied for the grant, and we got it. $49,750. There's no other cost. Susie estimates it might be a little bit additional of her time, but that's it. No other. You're going to get a report to the owners at the end of this that say, if you want to renovate it, this is how you might want to market it. Or, this is how you might want to renovate it, because this is what another use could be for this building.
Who are the owners?
I'm sorry?
Who are the,
Who are the owners? Bill DeBella and Tony Autorino are the owners. And it had nothing to do with the...
estimates of the
What?
renovation? Do you have any estimates of the renovation cost? Do you have
We
any
can't stop
idea?
laughing when we say that, can we?
I mean, you think it's realistic they'll spend any money on that?
The owners were interested, and
Bill was interested in
the
it?
the owners were interested, and wait, Tim Sullivan from DECD came down, who also came
What's
down.
DECD, just help me out.
Department of Economic and Community Development at the state. Tim came down. Tim is the one who also came down for the Brownfields grant. Tim looked at the building, went in the building, he said, it's perfect, it's a perfect project. And Bill DeBella and Tony Arena, we had several meetings there. Listen,
is our emergency management storage place?
That's what I was thinking.
Please.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Oh my God.
Good job.
There's some good stories sometimes, and it, you know, I think it's important to pursue these grants, okay? I'm not saying every grant, but some of these grants are important to go after. They can help you spur economic development, and that's what we're hoping. We're very close on the Brownfields grant to putting that out for bid, putting it out to bid to a licensed environmental professional. So, you know, I'd like your approval to, this has to be, the reason I'm bringing it to you right now, it has to be, I already signed, we got the notification from DECD. This has to be completed within 6 months, this report. So it's a very quick turnaround, and I have to take it to town meeting, also, after, it's a reimbursement grant. It's a state, I mean, look, I hate to say it's state money, you know, I mean, I hate to say
I hate
that.
when you say that too.
I-
It's still my money.
I know it's still your money, but it's money that's, this, again, the money will be spent in another community, whether it's Waterbury, whether it's Middletown, or another community, to see how they could market an old industrial property to bring it back to life. And why shouldn't we do it in Old Saybrook, especially when we're trying to reinvigorate Mariners Way?
How
That's
much
all.
is it?
The grant is $49,750, so.
So that is for a team of architects or experts to say what they can do with the building?
It's for, the company's in there, right? Isn't the company in your materials there that I,
The consulting would perform
Probably
market
some
Go
design
in
firm
your-
that's been related to somebody up in
I don't
Hartford.
know
I
that
gave
they're
this out to
architects.
everybody. Nobody reads.
So then we give a recommendation to the owners that they decide whether or not they, it's up to them whether or not they wanna do it, or?
Totally, it's just, a marketing.
Or as a free report, but either way it is.
Might make a good tourist spot.
Oh, anyway.
Where's
They
the
might come up
building?
with that, I don't know what they'll come up with, Tom. And they may say, this is gonna be an awesome tourist spot for, a look at the Connecticut River. Good recommendation.
We're gonna meet next week.
Right? What's that?
Ferry Road.
So,
Good,
um,
good place to land.
so I am looking,
Right on top.
What are you looking for?
go ahead.
I was wondering what motion you want.
I'm looking for a motion to appropriate and, recommend to town meeting the sum of $49,750 for the Making Places grant. And you could just say so moved off that.
I got it.
Okay, I'll make that recommendation to approve, recommended town meeting, sum of
No,
$49,750 for the Making Places grant.
thank you.
Second.
There's a motion
Who
and a
seconded
second. Brad. Is there any discussion?
Yes. As we talked about before, I'm opposed to having things come before the Finance on one evening and then want a motion on it to approve to go to town meeting. The fact is that Carl has brought this particular information to us previously and talked to us about it. And so this particular grant, I'm not opposed to if we want to have a vote on it tonight to pass it on.
Okay, any other discussion?
And you have my commitment that that will never happen. I mean, well, I shouldn't say never, but that, as far as I can
We
do it,
appreciate that,
it won't
because
happen.
we have some issues going on
Yeah.
here. We want to be solidified that 2 weeks is not a life and death situation in most cases.
And Carl, you have no commitment whatsoever, just for the record, from the owners of the property to make any renovations.
I have no commitment.
You have no commitment from the current owners of the property that would benefit from this assessment to make any renovations,
No,
correct?
no, absolutely not. It's, and the state didn't require that.
How much they have in that state budget, they didn't puts all these grants out,
You know,
and how successful they are. That, I never get numbers, and I keep seeing us spend money from grants to grants, like it's free money, and it's not.
okay,
And
so,
that's always my issue.
yeah, okay, so, you could make an argument at the state legislature that, hey, let's do away, you wanna balance the budget, let's do away with steep grants this year, which, who knows what that pot of money is? That pot of money might be $25 million. Now, you'll get you know, a bunch of town, you know, you're gonna get an interest group.
But I guess
Right. I hear you, Barry.
I guess my point is, I don't know what's in there, and everybody says grants, and we keep talking about the government spending money, the state being in debt, and we go ahead and we approve a grant to go through.
You're
That might
making,
end up being spent, and all it's gonna do is line the pockets of the guys that give you the study, and nothing's gonna happen. That's what I worry about.
you're making a philosophical argument, and I appreciate it. I'm trying to do my job
I know.
to bring an opportunity to Old Saybrook. That's all I'm trying to do.
Carl, wasn't that the area where they were talking about building condos
It
and hotels and
is,
stuff?
it is. So potentially if they pull the trigger on that, that might make this property, more valuable.
Between the bridges.
But it's not this property,
Oh, it's not that same property?
but it's in the area.
Right, I thought it was part of
And they
it.
are talking about building those this year.
Right.
When do you expect any feedback on the brownfield grant?
We are a little ways away on that. We haven't closed yet. DECD is in possession of all the documents. Susie is meeting with DECD tomorrow in Hartford to talk about the next steps on how we proceed to actually hire someone to do the assessment. So, we're close, but
So we're moving ahead.
yeah, we are moving ahead on that,
So sometime by
yes.
the end of the year, we might get some feedback.
I would say that we'll go to an LEP, licensed environmental professional, I would say within, by the end of the summer, I'd say. I'm hopeful. A little slower than I thought on that, actually, but it takes time.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Philosophically, I'll say no.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I said aye.
Yeah. Motion passes.
Got it.
Next,
Justice Assistance Grant, Chief, you wanna speak to this?
Well,
By the way,
that's right.
it's a JAG grant. As first selectman, I brought this to the Board of Finance previously, not this grant, but a previous JAG grant that went to town meeting because it was over 25,000. And when I was chairman of the Board of Finance, we did several JAG grants. 90 towns in the state of Connecticut, 90 are getting these grants, and we're one of them. They're simply pass-through grants.
So it's called a grant program, so they're not gonna change the name JAG, but it's really an allocation. So every 2 years, there's an allocation that's based on our population, our crime rate, and our crime rate per 1,000 segment of our population. So this year's allocation is $22,000. When we're informed of the allocation, we have to decide what we want to use the money for. A variety of different things. You can do program, you can do staffing things, you can do training. I believe that the allocation this year and what we actually put in our documents that was signed by the first selectman, myself, and the finance director, is an APHIS machine. So while we've talked a little bit about that in the police budget discussion, JAG funds cannot be used to supplant a budget. So at this time, I can't come to you as the police chief and say, let's reduce the line item in the operating budget that is set aside for a APHIS machine lease until they approve me to purchase an APHIS machine outright. So in discussions with the first selectman and the finance director, we're actually gonna try to change the name of that line item to leased technology, because as everyone knows, we have to budget now for the copy machines. So that line item may see an adjustment in the future, but it's not totally dependent on these pass-through allocated funds.
So, Tom, to your comment 5 minutes ago, this is, as the chief said, an allocation. I don't believe it's unique. It is something, you may have even seen the last one, and you may be even familiar with these grants. The chief was out ill for a little bit there, and this kind of came to my desk pretty quickly last week, and we had to get it out the door. So we are asking your indulgence here on the Board of Finance to be it is an allocation, it's hardly a grant, as the chief said. And I sent you everything, 90 towns are getting this allocation. And all we have to do is say, okay, just send us the money.
We were thrilled to show you the entire grant packet, by the way. There is nothing
And I asked them for it.
that is secured security information. Please show this to everyone you want. But it is an allocation.
No, it's
So if we didn't
printed all
apply
out.
for it and then told we got $22,000, we get told you're getting $22,000. Pick a category you wanna use it in. That's how it works.
So how are we using this now? You said it can't be part of the budget. What did you said I didn't understand? Because you went back and forth. What is it? Give me the bottom line.
We asked for an APHIS machine and to use.
Which is a
these-
fingerprint machine, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
With that machine, do you need any yearly maintenance?
There'll still be a maintenance fee of $2,500 per machine.
And then is this one machine or two?
This is one. So one machine costs $23,500 roughly, it's the round number. The additional funds would come out of the FF&E budget for the new police station.
And then the maintenance would be on top of that for 20?
Maintenance would come out of that leased technology line item in the budget, just like it does now for our current machine.
What do we have in the budget now? When we were talking about this before we saw this grant, what do we have in the budget before?
12,000.
12,000.
12.5, yeah.
And that was for an additional machine
That was for leasing.
Leasing it for 7 years.
The current machine he has now.
for $12,000 a year?
No, it's not 12,000 a year. It's it's a 7-year contract.
It's a 7-year contract, so you would see that, just like our first one, you would see that in the budget for the next 7 years. If successful, if we bought a machine outright, you wouldn't see that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's in now is $12,000, correct? In our budget.
Correct.
And that's gonna be annual for, how long is the lease?
7 years.
So it's $84,000 bottom line. Yes or no?
Well, there's maintenance money in that 12,000. So that's not all the lease.
It's not
How
all.
much is the lease just for the machine?
I think it's like $500-something a month, I don't have the figures
So
in front
that's
of me.
$6,000.
Because it's not police budget time.
So if the that's 4 years. The payout is 4 years.
As
It
opposed to
doesn't make
7 years.
sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So what's this 20, so the 22 would be covering the outright purchase?
Correct.
Or,
Yes.
and the purchase would be $76,000?
No,
in total.
23.5.
Do you have to do maintenance for $2,500 a year?
Otherwise, if something breaks, you pay an enormous amount of money for them to come fix it.
Is that
Can you
warranty
buy
for
out
2
the
years or
lease,
something?
Steve?
What's that?
Can you buy out that lease you have currently?
I don't know. There's 2 contracts with the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association, one to buy, one to lease. I can get you the exact leasing figures, but that's how, actually, hold on, that might be in the budget description.
Don't those machines get better as years go on? In other words, the one you're getting, is it gonna be better than the one you have?
Oh, yes. The one that
This is
we're,
ADA compliant on
the
this
one that we have will be ADA compliant.
In 7 years, you're spending $42,000 on a machine that costs $23,000. That does not make sense.
So,
That's just my opinion.
right, so if I could just back everyone back up just for 1 second. When we're discussing these funds, we have to be careful, as the financial stewards of the town, to not confuse our operating budget with accepting the allocation of funds. We're getting $22,000. I'm choosing to ask the state, in accordance with their document, as everyone saw, to use those funds to purchase an APHIS machine. If the state says yes, during our budget season, I may come back to you as the police chief and ask for a revision in my operating budget. But as it stands now, the two have to be separate and distinct conversations. Do you support that, Carl?
Oh, yes, I mean,
What kind of
So-
revision?
I'm not inclined to put 12,000 in the budget then.
You gotta keep it the same. You gotta keep it the same.
So is there a motion to
well, it would be a motion to.
appropriate $22,000?
And it doesn't have to go to town meeting, it's
Right.
strictly Board of Finance. Appropriate $22,000, which is a reimbursable grant through the Office of Policy and Management.
So it's really costing the town nothing.
That's correct,
Absolutely.
as it always has in the past.
All right, so moved.
Is there a second? There's a second.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Is there anything else besides the machine, besides yearly maintenance that's needed for this machine to work?
I think it's a phone line, but that's already slated and built.
Is So you buy this machine over here, 22,000, and then what's the annual maintenance on it now?
$2,500.
That's it, I know, it seems-
Isn't that like a 1-year or 2-year warranty up front without,
It's a maintenance agreement that it's part of the
Well,
contract.
that seems like a lot of maintenance on it. Fingerprint machine, I mean,
It's the state contract, right?
I think the first year, nothing will go wrong.
Carl, since the application date is March 4th, no later, and it's been signed on the 17th and 18th, is there a necessity that has to be approved tonight, or can it wait 2 weeks and then till we can get a chance
Actually,
to
1 week,
review the whole thing?
We need next week.
Can I ask why?
Why what?
Why would you wanna wait?
Because I don't like to be given something tonight, have to read it and make a decision about it, when in fact we talked about that before.
Yep.
And this particular grant wasn't talked about with us previously, like the Shoreline Electric Railway Powerhouse.
Okay,
So we're
It wasn't.
conflicting things that we've talked about already, so I'm trying to stay with this particular policy I have in my mind about this particular grant. And whether it's a good grant or not, it doesn't appear that there's a particular date that we need to rush through this on.
Well, the deadline was the 19th for submission of that, so.
Well, this one says March 4th.
Right, they extended the deadline, they didn't change the form.
Well, that's not in here and we don't know about that.
okay.
Sarge, at some point,
so-
you gotta believe what I say. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
So there is a motion and a second to appropriate the $22,000 for this grant, which is 100% reimbursable.
Costing the town only $2,500 for maintenance.
Right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Vote.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
There's also, we got this, the
I can't see it.
facilities manager position. Do you wanna,
Said you were gonna, I
Yeah.
don't think
you wanna
that.
talk about it?
Someone asked for it.
I know, and I sent it out
Yeah.
to them.
Oh,
So
alright.
someone asked for it, I just
I
thought
didn't know if you wanted to talk about it.
No,
All right,
no,
good.
not in particular, I just,
No.
it was asked for and I promised I would get it.
All right, anything else from this?
Nothing.
Okay, we have a meeting next Tuesday, the 31st. Board of Ed, Public Works, Park and Rec, and Youth and Family Services will be here.
go over that again.
Say that again?
Board of Ed, Public Works,
Available.
Park and Rec.
Park and Rec, Youth and Family Services. That's next Tuesday, the 31st, here in this conference room at 7 o'clock.
Well, that's ambitious.
Bob, is there any way to get those off-budget revenue numbers? We talked about.
I gave them to,
I have them. You want them? I'll PDF
Yeah.
them to you.
Did you get it?
If there's anyone else you want to see, let me
Well, no,
know.
it's a
The
regular
following
meeting, yeah.
Tuesday is the public hearing,
Well, no, it's not.
and the Tuesday after that is our last meeting before we
It's March 31st.
present budget.
Oh, yeah, I got it.
3
Got it
weeks.
through.
Anybody else want the off-budget,
Yeah, send it to everybody.
Yeah, I'm
Everybody?
not gonna-
Okay.
I don't think I'm gonna be here for that next one.
The 31st,
No,
the 4th,
the
the
meeting
7th,
after the public hearing. I think it's kids'
the
vacation.
7th.
Oh, it's the 7th? Oh, okay, never mind.
Public hearing.
The 14th is the last meeting before we present a budget to the first selectman. Or
I won't be here.
recommend a
here.
budget to the town meeting.
I won't be here
Next
on the
week is
14th.
here.
I won't be here next week.
Okay.
you know, please come back?
You want them to
Oh,
come?
it's
You're
just-
not gonna be here next week either?
No, I'll be here next week, the 14th, April 14th I won't.
I'll be here.
Well, that's nice.
Motion adjourned.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?